Hey guys, welcome back to RMA Garage. I'm Mark and I'm glad you joined us today. In today's video, we are going to be showing you the bike rack that we bought to install on the back of an RV. Now this bike rack is a little special because it is RV approved. And what that means is that it's beefy, it's heavy, the welds are strong, it doesn't fold, it's pretty rigid, and it's meant to stand up to the punishment that an RV can put out when you're going 70 miles down the road and it's bouncing constantly. So that was one of the things we had to learn, was making sure that the bike rack was not going to damage itself or release the bikes that it was carrying. So in this video, I'm going to show you the rack that we bought, how we store it, how we put it on, and one little modification that we had to do to make it work for us. All right, so let's get to it. So the bike rack that we bought, it's upside down, but it's the Swagman Escape E. I will leave a link below in the description. Depending on what website you go to, sometimes they call it the Swagman 2 Escape E, but this one basically is the Escape E. So I will leave a link below just to make sure that you guys can link exactly to the one that we're reviewing here today. All right, so the first thing I want to show you is how we store our bike rack. I built a plywood dolly basically out of, these are 1.5 inch caster wheels, 1/2 inch plywood, and 2x2s that run basically the entire length of the rack. And this allows me to push this around the garage. It can move back and forth, and what I do is I store it underneath our motorcycle trailer, which is in the back there. We got the ramp down because Ryan's riding today, but this allows me to push it underneath the trailer, and I can move it out of the way and maneuver it around the garage in the driveway without any problems. So this is how we store the rack when we're not using it. Okay, so the other thing is I had to disassemble one of the pieces here, which is lying underneath, and usually it gets installed here and it basically sticks up a little bit more. And so I have to take some of it apart to the way that I store it. If you guys have more room, then that's awesome, but I have to do what basically works for us. So the next step is going to be assembling it and putting it on the RV. All right, so the first thing that we have to do is assemble the bike rack. And the reason why I have to assemble it is because, like I said before, I store this underneath my motorcycle trailer. So when this piece is installed, which is how you go down the road with it, it doesn't fit underneath the trailer. So the first thing I'm going to do is take these off. And I just want to show you this thing, the steel on this is at least 1/8 inch thick. You got 2 plates, basically, well, not 2 plates, but it's kind of like a bent U here. This thing is beefy. And then the steel inside here, I would have to say, is probably, I wouldn't say 1/4 inch, but just a little less than 1/4 inch thick. All right, so what we're going to do, install this. Now they give you a washer. My lock washer just went for a ride. So you have a regular washer, a lock washer, and then a nut. Okay, so to install these, you're going to need a 19mm wrench on the bolt side, and then I've got a 19 ratchet on the nut side. All right, so we're going to snug these up. I'm not going to go too crazy with them because I'm going to take this apart once we're finished. Okay. So this is now together and ready to be installed on the RV. Okay, so one feature about this rack that I love is that it has a, basically this is the slot that, I don't know what you call this. This would be the hitch part. Then the receiver is on the RV. And what this has a locking bolt. So you can actually bolt this hitch part into the receiver, and it's the anti-wobble device. So I'll show you that here in a minute. All right, so now we're ready to mount the rack to the RV. And basically, this is a little heavy, but it's not too overly cumbersome where you can't do it yourself. Just have to get the right angle. Basically, that slides in. Just like so. As you can see, this thing sits pretty high off the ground. You don't have to worry about the rack bottoming out. There's quite a bit of room underneath here. But the one thing I do want to show you is I'm going to slide this in until we see where the pin goes in. All right, so now that we have the bike rack into the receiver, you can see the threads in there, and that is where we're going to have the anti-wobble device, which is basically this bolt. We're going to bolt this piece to this piece, basically. The threads are basically going to suck this to the side of the receiver, and we have a washer here, and then a lock washer to hold it put, and then of course on the other side you'll have the device, the locking device, so nobody can back it out. So we stick that in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this up as if we're going to go down the road. And I'm going to show you guys how strong this is and how tight this thing can actually be. Now, I didn't have a metric for this, so this is 15/16 socket. So make sure this is nice and tight. All right, guys, so you can see here, I'm trying to wiggle this, and this thing is not moving at all. It is completely stable. No wobble whatsoever. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to load a bike on this inner one, and I'm going to show you something that we had run across here. So open that up. All right, so I'm going to load one of the bikes. All right, guys, so as you can see, the bike is somewhat on there, but we're having one issue, and I wanted to show you this. The handlebar is touching the RV, and that was the issue in the modification that we had to address. This rack sits a little bit of an angle, so the bikes are kind of at an angle, but because the handlebar hits, this doesn't line up and the bike is not sitting properly. It needs to lean over a little bit more, and it can't because it's hitting the RV. So we made one modification, and that is using a hitch extension. Now this is made by Roadmaster. This thing in and of itself weighs probably at least 10-15 pounds. 1/4-inch steel. It has the anti-wobble device inside. And it also comes with a lock. So it has anti-wobble and a lock. So I'll leave links below to all of this as well. But this is I believe this is a 6-inch extension. Again, I'll leave a link below. But this is what we needed to move the rack back just far enough so we can mount the bikes properly. And right now I'm going to do that and show you how well it worked. Okay, so we got the bike loaded now, and as you can see, it is at an angle, kind of angled towards the RV, and it looks good. And as you can see now, we have room between the handlebar and the RV, probably about 5 inches. And so this is how we go down the road. We have the bike, we have the rack, and we have the extension. So as you can see, the bike is angled back to the RV just slightly. There is a slight angle up as well to the rack. Clearance wise, I mean, basically we are above the actual bumps on the hitch. So as you can see, this thing sits pretty high off the ground, and we have plenty of space between the handlebar and the RV. If I get real close, see, there's plenty of space there. All right, guys, I wanted to show you a couple of features of this rack. Really isn't a lot, but it's worth mentioning. So obviously the way you put the front wheel goes in this little holster here, and basically with it turned up, it sets the tire in and it prevents the bike from going backwards. And then of course you got the ratchet that goes on top, and then this ratchets, you push this in and then you push it down, and then this engages the front tire. And it's basically all adjustable. Now the rear wheel, obviously different lengths of bikes. This actually slides along this, so you can basically tailor this to whatever length of bike that you have. So it works out perfectly. Now there is a ratchet system on this side as well. So you flip this up, and that's how you load the bike. If I can do this with one hand. Okay, so that's the ratcheting system, and this is the little rubber piece here that protects the rim. So what you do is you slide that in there, and then you ratchet that down, and then that doesn't come out. And then obviously you push that in, push it back out for it to come out. And also there are locks. So once you set this down and you lock it down on the bike, you use the key and you turn that, and you can't push this in anymore and it won't come up. So it gives it a little bit of extra protection. I'm going to show you some video here of the welds. This thing is built very strong. It's a tank. You know, the whole thing probably weighs maybe 50 pounds. I mean, I can lift it. It's not super heavy, cumbersome, but this is a very beefy rack. Fit and finish is perfect. Definitely recommend Swagman. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I usually answer them within 24 hours. I appreciate you guys supporting the channel. Click that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to click on the bell so you won't miss our next episode. Appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you soon.